Week 10 of the 2025 NFL season just wrapped up with the Eagles beating the Packers on Monday Night Football. With that said, we've now seen every team play 9 or 10 games, and we have a pretty solid understanding of which teams are real playoff contenders and which teams are frauds. To begin, in the AFC, we have three 8-2 teams, being the Colts, Broncos, and Patriots. Now, I'd say all three of these teams are basically solid locks to make the playoffs, since you only need around 10 or 11 wins, sometimes even just 9 wins to make the playoffs. And with these teams already having 8 wins, you can all but guarantee that they should be able to make it in. So if we look at the Colts' rest of season schedule, you have teams like the Chiefs, Texans, Jacksonville, Seattle, San Francisco, Jacksonville, and Houston. And you have some tough games. I think the Chiefs, hard game right there. Houston, amazing defense. Seattle, that should be a tough game. Then you have also other games like the Jacksonville Jaguars, who are coming off a tough loss to the Texans. And you have teams like the 49ers, where they have a lot of injuries. So it's the Colts. They already have 8 wins. Their schedule, well, it is tough, probably a lot tougher than what they started off the year, facing easier teams like the Dolphins, Titans, Raiders, the Cardinals. You can basically guarantee that they should stay uh, high and likely still win their division without a lot of problems. Next up, you have the Broncos, who are also 8-2. They've been winning a lot of relatively close games, just barely beating out the Texans, the Raiders, the Giants, the Jets, and then the rest of the season schedule is slightly difficult. You have harder teams like the Chiefs, the Packers. Who really knows at this point? Are they good? Or are they not? We'll see. And then the Chiefs and the Chargers, some tough divisional games to end off the year. But then you also have easier games like the Washington Commanders and the Las Vegas Raiders. So I'd say they're basically a lock. They can get out a few more easy wins, and then, just like they have been doing all year, likely grind out some tough defensive games and beat a few other good teams. And then the last 8-2 team are the New England Patriots, who up until this point have had a pretty easy schedule. They have faced harder teams, like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and who else do we have here? Buffalo Bills. But for the most part, they've faced a lot of pretty bad teams, like the Raiders, the Dolphins, Carolina, who else? Saints, Titans, Browns, Atlanta. And you may be thinking that's going to stop, but no, they have a pretty easy rest of season schedule as well, with teams like the Jets, the Bengals, the Giants. It's never good when a team fires their head coach, so there's that. And then we also have the Bills, another tough game, the Ravens, another tough game, and then two teams with not that many wins, the Jets and the Dolphins. But the Dolphins just randomly beat the Bills. Who knows if they're good or not? I said their playoff hopes are over, but it could be more of a tough game to end out the year. So now that we have the 1, 2, and 3 seed out of the way, the rest of it is where it becomes more iffy because you have the Steelers and the 4 seed fighting around 500 just like they seem to be every year. However, you have the Ravens down in the 10th seed who are 4 and 5, Steelers 5 and 4. And then you have teams with more wins, or I guess the Jaguars and Steelers are tied, but you have teams with more wins like the Chargers and Bills who are in tougher divisions, who with 7 and 3 and 6 and 2 or 6 and 3. And this is where it gets to be more complicated of which teams are going to make it and which teams won't. I would say the Chargers and Bills are basically locks. I could look at their schedules, and if I were to, you have the Chargers. Let's see, they have the Jaguars, the Raiders, the Eagles. So they have, the Chiefs, Houston, Denver. So they have some tougher games, but they also have some relatively easier games. I'd say you can basically count on them to win against the Raiders, Dallas. Houston could be iffy. They have a great defense, but still, can their offense keep up like they haven't been able to for a lot of this year? And then for the Bills, you have them facing other pretty solid teams. Buccaneers, Houston, great defense. Steelers, just your classic 500 Steelers. Bengals, New England, Cleveland, Jets, Eagles. So they have some other wins you could say are pretty free, like versus the Bengals and the Jets. At the same time, like it's Josh Allen, so you're really just going to not make the playoffs. You kind of have to count on him doing it. So I'd say, besides the first three that are locked, I would lock in the Chargers and the Bills. And then where it becomes more iffy is the Steelers at 5 and 4 and the Jaguars at 5 and 4. And then teams that aren't going to make the playoffs, I'd say you count out the Bengals and below. And I would really only focus on the Ravens, Texans, and Chiefs being able to sneak in. I really don't think the Texans' offense, though, is going to be good enough. Maybe they did just manage to drop like 26 points or something crazy like that versus the Jaguars in the fourth quarter to make a comeback to win. But you can't count on that happening every week. At least they get CJ Stroud back soon from the concussion. But I would say they're probably out, already having 5 wins, and I believe they have a pretty tough schedule coming up. Or no, Titans, Bills, Colts, Chiefs, Arizona, Las Vegas, Chargers, Colts. So just like with other teams, some easy games, probably against the Cardinals and the Raiders and the Titans, but also some more difficult games. Colts twice, Chiefs, Bills. I really don't know if they'll be able to win enough of these to get in. So what I would expect to happen is, I mean, it's the Chiefs, it's Mahomes. Is he really just going to not even make the playoffs? I mean, you kind of have to count him in. So I would say uh, the Chiefs are likely going to win a decent amount of their games. They have Rashee Rice back. And I would say they jump the Jaguars for the 7th seed. Maybe they win more than the Bills or Chargers, but they're already 5-4. They already have more wins. It's going to be difficult, but anything's possible. So I would say the Chiefs steal the 7th seed, and then the Steelers. Uh, I really don't think they can hold off the Ravens. I bet the Ravens will come back with Lamar back and healthy and take the division. And if we look at the Ravens' schedule, they still have some other easy games coming up. You have Cleveland, the Jets, the Bengals, teams with not that many wins. And then let's say they manage to win those 3, and they come back, and they have Pittsburgh twice. So their season's really in their own hands right now, as if they can beat Pittsburgh, get another uh, easy few wins from these other games. And then they do have some tougher games like New England, and then potentially Green Bay. But after what I just saw on Monday Night Football versus the Eagles, I really don't know anymore about the Packers. So I would say the Ravens would be my bet to win the division and take out the Steelers. So I would have the Colts, the Broncos, the Patriots, the Ravens taking out the Steelers, the Chargers, the Bills, and then the Chiefs jumping up, taking out the Jaguars, and the Texans, I believe, will fall short. Now, in the NFC, you don't have any 8-win teams like you do in the AFC, but you do have the Eagles and the Seahawks, who both have 7 wins. Both are 7-2. So to start with the Eagles, I'd say they're basically a guaranteed lock. Their division, the Cowboys, the Commanders, the Giants, they're all pretty terrible. I don't think there's any way the Eagles really manage to lose the division, and I really don't think you even have to look at their schedule to say that. And then next up, you have the Seahawks. They have a much tougher division with the Rams and the 49ers. I mean, also the Cardinals, but anyways, I'd say they're basically guaranteed. They're already 7-2, really high chance. And then you have the Lions first in the NFC North. That's also a very tough division with the Bears and the Packers both also sitting in the playoff race. But it's the Lions. Their offense looked great this past week, and I'd say you really just can't count them out. Then you have the Buccaneers. Once again, another team with a pretty bad division. I mean, you do have the Panthers who are 5-5, but then you have the Falcons and the Saints who are just both pretty bad teams. And the Panthers, I really don't think you can trust them after they just lost to the Saints. I don't know, Bryce Young really can't even hit 200 yards passing for the most part, and they just look pretty bad. So I'd say Buccaneers basically have that division locked down. Then you have the Rams, which should be a really interesting matchup versus the Seahawks this next week for the division, but also just to see who potentially the best team in the NFL is, or at least best team in the NFC in my eyes. But it's the Rams. Matthew Stafford is playing amazing right now. I think I saw a stat that he's thrown like 20 straight touchdown passes to 0 interceptions or something crazy like that. He's playing great this year. Puka, Devontae Adams, amazing wide receiver duo, and I'd say they're basically a lock. So where it starts to get a little more confusing and be more of a tight race in my eyes is with the Bears, Packers, and 49ers. You have the Bears, who are 6-3, which is great for them. But if you also look at their schedule, they've been facing some pretty bad teams with the Giants, the Bengals, Baltimore. Somehow they lost Baltimore, who didn't even have Lamar Jackson, so that was interesting. But then they had like Saints, the Commanders, the Raiders, the Cowboys. So they're coming off a lot of wins, but for some pretty bad teams who aren't set to make the playoffs, besides the Ravens, who I think will. And then their schedule does get a little bit tougher. You have the Vikings, who I know are like 4-5, but that's still, it's a divisional game. Going to be tough. You have Pittsburgh, who is going to play tough no matter what. Then you have other teams like the Eagles, the Packers twice, the Browns. Okay, they shouldn't really have a problem there. But then you have the 49ers and the Lions. So I would say their playoff hopes probably are going to end on if they can beat the Packers out for these last few wildcard spots. And those are going to be very important games. And then maybe the 49ers in Detroit. 49ers also should be pretty important because they are sitting right outside the number 8 seed right now. And I know they're number 8 seed, but if you look at their schedule, they have some pretty easy games coming up with the Cardinals, the Panthers, the Browns, the Titans. And then it does get a little bit harder with the Colts and the Bears and then Seattle. But I would say it's pretty safe to say that right there is a 4-win streak, especially coming off the bye, which should be nice to end out some harder games down the stretch. But if you count 4 wins right there, they already have 6. That puts them at 10. I would say they're basically guaranteed to make the playoffs then, especially getting Brock Purdy back. I would assume they'd want him back. Mac Jones, I mean, he's been good, but I don't think you start him over your quarterback that's getting paid $50 million per year. And then also when they get Ricky Pearsall back, I believe that's how you say his name. But yeah, oddly enough, he's been out longer, I believe, with his, I think, knee or foot or some type of leg injury than he was when he literally got shot. So not sure exactly what's up there, but once they get those two players back and with that easier schedule, I would think they're basically a lock. But you also have to remember only 2 of the Bears, Packers, or 49ers can make it, because I'd say these top 5, as I was saying before, are guaranteed. So that leaves 2 spots, and I'm ruling out the Panthers because of what happened again with like the Saints and just past few games. I know they did beat the Packers, and I don't really know what's up with that. But because of that, I would say 49ers are a lock, and either the Packers or the Bears won't make it. If I look at this Packers rest of the season schedule, you have the Giants. I mean, they just fired their head coach. That should be an easier game. But then you have 3 straight divisional games: Vikings, Lions, Bears. That's going to be hard. Denver, I mean, that's one of the best defenses in football right there. Back to a divisional game. Back to the Ravens. Back to Minnesota divisional game. So that's a really hard end of season schedule. With the Bears also, I'd say have a pretty hard schedule besides the Browns that just got thrown in there. But I guess I really don't know. I'm interested in what you guys would have to say, but my guess would probably be the Packers, or it really just, in my eyes, is going to come down to who can win when they face each other in weeks 14 and 16. But for now, I would say the 49ers would probably jump up to the 6th seed in my eyes by the end of the season, and then the Bears and the Packers will battle for the 7th seed, and I'm seriously torn 50-50 on who I think will take it. I really don't like either of these schedules, but I guess after what I just saw from the Packers on Monday Night Football versus the Eagles and how they could only score 7 points, I'm going to have to lean towards the Bears, even though they've been beaten up on some bad teams, or not even really beaten up, just barely squeaking by wins, like on the Raiders and the Commanders, and even the Bengals too, and the Giants. But I still would have to trust them more than the Packers after what I just saw against the Packers losing to Carolina and Philadelphia.